Hi, this is Nancy and Carlo in Colombia. We've been out here for 2 weeks and we've been having a fabulous time. We've been testing different gliders in a variety of different conditions.
We've been very lucky. We've been flying some very new gliders, the Nova Sector, the new ENC glider, and the Advanced Yota 2, and also the new Symphonia.
And also a small taster on the Nova Ion 5.
Oh yes. And
we'll start with the Symphonia because that was the first glider you flew here at Pichinche. So what can you tell us about that?
So the Symphonia, I'd flown it a little bit already in the UK in winter conditions, and was very impressed with its performance. So the Symphonia is a new super high A glider from a new brand, which is Hannes Papescha's new brand.
Just for those who may not know who Hannes Papesch is, tell us about Hannes and Fee.
Okay. Well, I'll do my best. Hopefully I'll get it right.
A little snippet.
Yeah. So Hannes Papesch has been was the designer for Nova for 25 years, since the late 80s, early 90s. And as far as I know, he's been one of the single most designers that's come out with some of the biggest steps forward in paragliding, things like diagonal ribs and many other things besides, and managed to reduce the amount of lines paragliders have massively, so really improved their performance. Another thing that I think people might know of his gliders in Nova they have the Mentor series, and he's been a champion of safety, getting more performance out of safer gliders and lower aspect, rather than where some designers have gone higher aspect and making the gliders more and more demanding and getting more performance but making them suitable for a smaller and smaller number of pilots. He's been really focusing on making gliders that are accessible to more pilots, so he's trying to get more performance to more pilots in safety.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a glider in its own class now. It's super high because it's not really aimed as, it's an A-class glider, but it's not aimed at beginners. It's not really aimed at being a first wing, although I think a very talented beginner who's very ambitious could fly it if they had good glider skills. But first, it's really meant to be a sort of second or third glider, so that's what it's meant to be. And here I got to fly it in some thermic conditions, some quite turbulent conditions, and yeah, very impressed with its performance and its handling. It's like no other A glider I've flown. It's yeah, it has more dynamic feeling and more agile handling. It's more responsive. It has a bit faster trim speed and more glide than any other glider, A-class glider I've ever flown before.
It gives you the reassurance of the A,
yeah,
and it gives you that confidence that you can feel the glider above your head, being nicely in control, and things are just smoothed a little. But
yeah,
you can feel it also has the performance, which is nice. I think we were flying together. I was on the Yota 2, Advanced Yota 2, and you were on the B. And yeah, we were flying around quite happily together.
Yeah,
keeping up, climbing well.
The Symphonia has a lot of the passive safety of an A-class glider, and that reassuring feeling. Yeah, I agree. But what it has, for me, it has a reasonable amount of feedback and energy to it, and I mean, it bites nicely into thermals compared to a lot of A-class gliders, which will tend to hang back a bit and be quite pitch stable. It's like some gliders that have passed in the B class that are actually much more like C-class gliders to fly. They're really C-class gliders that have got through a B class. With the Symphonia, I don't feel quite that way. It feels, when I tested it with collapses and other maneuvers and how it let it flies and has a lot of the passive stability, it feels to me, of the A class. The main reason it's not really so it's not aimed at beginners, is because it actually has quite, for an A-class glider, it has very direct responsive handling.
Yeah.
And so if you put in a sort of heavy-handed wrong input, it's going to react to it more. And in active air, it did seem to require a bit more active flying, but actually if you let the glider just fly, it's very well behaved. So in this active air, it's very difficult to tell with performance, but I flew with lots of different gliders, and I had no problem keeping up with people flying B and even C-class gliders. Obviously some of that's down to making decisions about your routes, but just in terms of the performance of the glider, whereas on other A-class gliders I would notice that my speed was a bit lacking, and I'd keep feeling like I need to be on full bar and things like that to keep up, and that with the Symphonia I didn't feel that at all. And the trim speed of it, I was keeping up with current high P-class gliders, and the glide, to be honest, I didn't really seem to be losing out at all, if I'm really honest. When you go into a thermal, I can feel where the thermal is, and it does give a bit less feedback than, say, a high B or a C-class glider. It's a bit more dampened than that, so you have to kind of relax a bit and let it speak to you, let it talk to you. But then the glider does give you a nice feedback. You can feel where the best part of the thermal is and cut into it. So you flew the Symphonia as well,
yeah,
Nancy, so.
I think you're quite right with what you were saying about relaxing into it, because certainly in some of the conditions we were flying in, normally, well, I think we're both quite active pilots and wanting to be on our gliders, and it was sort of feeling like you should be on your glider, but actually you didn't need to with the Phi. It was the Phi Symphonia. It was very much sort of, okay, I can relax into this, let the glider talk to me, let it feedback where the thermals are, so that I can turn and get into the best lift.
Really impressed with how the Symphonia responds to collapses. So even inducing big collapses, nothing, hands up, nothing, as you'd expect for an A-class glider. It's reasonably, because it's got speed and energy, it's quite dynamic, but it bangs out and pops off and flies off really well. Well, actually, if you're very heavy-handed and you put in big inputs, because the Symphonia has energy and converts energy nicely and has speed, you can find yourself building up quite some rolls, surprisingly for an A-class glider, I would say. So that's the part that probably isn't so well suited to a beginner again, especially if they're heavy-handed. But again, if you just put your hands up, it just steadies out very quickly.
My feeling is that a pilot flying a C-rated wing, stepping to the Phi Symphonia, is going to notice a difference in the way the glider handles and the way it performs. But if if they're looking for safety and wanting to have that reassurance but still have high B performance, I think they're going to be more than happy. I think they're going to get that comfortable balance of performance with the safety.
Okay. Well, yeah, so for a pilot that's stepping out from an A-class glider, the Symphonia is a really nice progression. It's going to give them, compared to other A-class gliders, significantly more performance, keeping the same safety level. The Symphonia has the performance of a high B glider, a current high B glider, and the safety stability of an A-class glider.